Good. This is we are Cora. Are you going, Jamie?
Yep.
Cool. Wonderful. Okay. Cool. Well, I think I know most of you. For those of you that don't, I was kind of co-opted here. Actually, I've been in and out of Felixstowe Radio for a very long time, doing bits and bobs. But about 3.5, 4 years ago, I think I started diving in a little bit more. So a little bit about me. So this is my day job. So I work for a company called Appear at the moment. I'm their CTO, and it's headquartered in Oslo. So I'm spending a fair bit of time travelling to and from there, as well as lots of other places. And I actually basically do technology for broadcast in my day job. So this is a bit of a kind of busman's holiday, really, I guess, in terms of playing with stuff, but I love it. So that's kind of that's where I'm at. I also have a big role at Christchurch in Felixstowe, where I head up the music and the tech. So I'm just going to go through a whole load of topics, some of which are just educational, but the main two things are going to be how to run the studio now, main studio one, and how to do outside broadcasts. So those are the two main things, but I'm going to tell you what other a few other bits about tech as we go, just so you can have something that's in your head. So first of all, this is really...
Excuse me, Dave, you could go close that door.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is really only relevant if you are doing any form of pre-record or for people that are involved in doing stuff, because the main thing here is keeping the quality on air. When I actually got involved about 3.5 years ago, the way it had been set up was horrendous. Off air sounded awful, and that's due to a variety of technology decisions that have been done at the time. So we sorted those out, but one thing is important to think about. There's a friend of mine once said to me many years ago in my day job, you only have one chance to make a first compression. See what I say there? And basically what's happening when you put a program out, we actually have compression that happens from the mixer here going outwards. And all the MP3 files, all the files you play on Radio DJ or wherever you play them on, are already compressed. So the more and more bits of compression that happen, the more the sound can get a little bit less good as you actually do more and more compression. So all I'm saying is, if you're going to pre-record a program, I would recommend you go up to 320 kilobits per second as the quality you save it. That's like the highest. If you save it that good, then it's a bit more extra disk space, but it's really not an issue with modern computers. And that means where you concatenate it with our transmitter feed and all of the compression, all the songs you've already have already had, it doesn't sound so bad. So that's just a tip. So remember, you get these notes, 320 kilobits per second. The upper range is ideal.
Can I just ask what concatenation means?
Concatenation is putting one thing after another. So it's like when the original music was made, it was compressed, and then if you pre-record a program, you're playing that back, and then you're compressing what you've just made, so you've got two concatenations, and then when that gets played back from Play It on air, it then goes through compression from here to the transmitter, so that's third. So you're concatenating 3 lots of compression, and there is degradation at every step. So what we're trying to say is, let's keep it as good as possible through the chain. Really, all that means is try and do it at a high rate.
If you mix FLAC and WAV with 320s, is that a problem?
FLAC and WAV are basically uncompressed or lossless. They're fine.
Are they allowed to mix with 320s as well?
Well, you're only ever going to save it as one thing.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think we can probably play any of those, but obviously WAVs is pretty high bandwidth. I would go either 320 kilobits per second MP3 or FLAC. I wouldn't do WAV because it's bigger than it needs to be.
Okay.
All right, you can always come back to me about these. Just for those of you that don't know, in case you've never known, the actual aerial is on the top of the school roof. So it's not that far from here, and that's coincidental. It could be anywhere. It doesn't need to be close to where the studio is for the way we do the connection. But that just shows you that actually we're really good at giving the seagulls lots of radio. But it extends further than this, obviously, a bit. But it's just to show you that's where it's happening. And the hassle we've had in the last 3 days was on Sunday morning at 9:13. The little computer that's upstairs in the data room at the school died, so we couldn't get access until the school was open again to actually go and sort it out. But that's how it happens. Okay, the studio setup as it is now. So, this is, again, not to blind you with science, but just for your information about what's happening outside of Studio One. So what's happening in the hallway outside in that big rack. You don't need to remember this. This is just so you understand some of the basics. What we have is we have a computer out there running Play It, okay, and that's feeding into Studio One. So you've got Play It coming into Studio One. It's also feeding, potentially, it's available in Studio 2, not that that's up and running fully yet, and it's also available for us to run a bypass, which I'm going to do later, to bypass Studio 1 so we can play with it this evening. But don't worry about that. What we've then got is Studio 1, there's a transmission selector, and we then put it through a whole load of processing. We send it out to Azure, the cloud, for all the on-air and tuning and everything. We send it to the transmitter, and it also gets recorded locally on a computer because we have to record it as part of our obligations for broadcasting, and that's also where Jamie laboriously does listen again manually every flipping week, all the time, and we need to get him out of that because that must be horrible. I can't believe he's stuck at it so long. Anyway, you don't need to remember this, it's just to give you some background. This is a more simple diagram of what we've got in Studio One. So we've got a Windows PC running a radio DJ, with just a separate PC with internet access on. And then the Studio One mixing desk has now got 2 auxiliary inputs, it's got 4 microphones, it's got Play It, it's got Radio DJ, and the feed comes out. Okay, so that's the essence of the main beast. We are going to add a couple of things to that in the coming months, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. So this is the beast. This is the beast. The number one rule is, like, don't go pressing loads of buttons just to try and get something to work. And what I've tried to do on this diagram, and I suggest we print this out and laminate it and have it in there somewhere, is I've tried to show you, I've actually labelled them nice and properly on here because I could do it electronically on this picture, but I've also tried to show you which buttons need to be in and out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through a few more minutes in here, and then when we're finished going live from Studio One, I'll bypass it and we can all gather round and actually talk through these buttons. But as one, I thought, before we get in there, it's worth talking through how it's set up. So I think most of you are very familiar with how we've set it up. So the red mic at the front is your presenter's mic. You've then got 3 guests, which should go as you a presenter, left to right. So guest 1, 2, and 3. You've got 2 aux leads hanging out, which we've got various adapters on to get you in and out of USB and things. 2 CDs, which, you know, we didn't really change them at all. They're still as they were in the rack. We're just putting them in there. Radio DJ and Play It. Now, basically, and those 2 are not yet in use. What they will become, just if you're interested, one of them will become a VoIP channel for phone-ins, so you can bring people in live on WhatsApp or whatever.
I don't trust my friends.
Okay, if you've got friends you can trust.
Oh yes. Some of us have.
And the other one was always planned to be, if you've got something else happening in Studio 2 that you want to bring in, you can bring Studio 2 live through Studio 1. So you can actually opt to Studio 2 from here. But that's another, whether we ever go there, I don't know, but that's because we might have other things. So basically, these channels, all of these channels are multi-purpose, so there's buttons up here that select what they do. So fundamentally, the first 4 channels, the mic button is pushed in. That's why it says in on those 4. So if someone has crazily unpressed one of them, that might be the reason why a mic's not working at all. Then we've got all of the other channels, and then there's quite a few knobs here that do important things. So first of all, you've got the volume control of your speakers in there. And your speakers, you will note, automatically cut out whenever you open any of the microphones, which is why you also need to wear headphones or have headphones. And don't try and run a show without headphones, because you need to hear when you haven't got the right mic up and when things are too ambient and stuff. You need to be hearing enough to listen there. So presenter headphone volume there, and then we've got the guest headphone volume there, and that goes into that other little amplifier where the guest headphones go. There's also 1 or 2 other buttons in here that do different things, but it's easier for me to show you in there. One is splitting, but one of the most important things to get your heads around is the Q buttons, which is this, not the also A channel doesn't work if it's not turned on. It's point number one. So they need to be green. This bottom number needs to be green for it to be working. So that's a fundamental thing to check. And then the top one is Q. And what that does is that allows you to check that channel before you've faded it up. So you can check people's microphones. So when you get a guest in, what you need to do is get them to talk to you. You cue their mic channel number. You get them to talk to you. You can look at the level, make sure it's roughly getting to the top of the green, and then take the cue button off. And you know when you open that fader, as long as they stay where they are near the microphone, it's going to be a reasonable level.
That was called PFL on the old one, wasn't it?
It was called PFL. It's they're roughly equivalent terms, but yeah, it does the same thing. And the way I've set it up at the moment in there with the buttons as they are here is when you cue something, it keeps the station running on the right speaker, I think, but you can check on the left speaker. So you can, and it does the same in the headphones. So you can hear things, so you can hear what's happening, but you can also be checking the person. And as long as the fader's not up, then it's not a problem. Now the microphone gains, I mean everything on this, because this is a picture I grabbed off the internet, are all on 0. That's not realistic. We'll come back to setting gains in a little bit. But fundamentally, those are the main things about the mixer. Has anyone got any questions or observations from the last 5 weeks of having it in, and the way anything works or doesn't work?
When I come in on a Sunday morning,
Yeah.
I use my laptop.
Yeah.
But if somebody's been on before me, when I put my laptop in and then I check it, the sound levels are just boom. So I turn the volume down on my laptop.
Okay.
Rather than, because I don't know what button to
Okay.
on there. So
Good question. Okay, so the things you shouldn't really need ever to touch are any of these black buttons, the black knobs. Okay, and probably on radio, DJ, and play it, you shouldn't really need to change those gains from where they are, because roughly that's been set. So if you have the fader at the top at 0, that should be healthy level on play it and radio, DJ. You may need to tweak radio, DJ a little bit sometimes, but play it, you shouldn't need to change that. The microphones, again, there's a range in which and we'll come back to using microphones in a minute, but these are the two ones that you see. It's the red ones at the top of the channel you're on, and that's the gain. And basically, what you need to do before you go on air is press the cue button on that channel, play back your thing, and change the gain control there till it's just getting to the top of green.
Yeah, okay.
That's what you need to do for every, and the same if you bring an iPad in or whatever, anything extra.
So it's the top line.
It's the red one. It's the red one.
Okay.
Basically, red ones are kind of volumes. So that's the speaker volume, headphone volume, guest volume, and these are, if you like, the volumes of the thing. Because really, the way you use a radio mixing desk is different to mixing sound for a gig. Because mixing the sound for a gig, you'll have all sorts of different levels. But these are really a glorified switch. Because apart from when you're riding down music to speak over it, when you want your mics fully open, you don't have them up half. You want to open the channel right up for the microphones. And when you're playing a track, you'll have the faders right at the top. But you'll just be ducking them manually if you're talking over it.
That guest volume speaker.
Yes.
Button, does that?
This one here.
Yeah. Does that work all 3 of the guests?
Yes.
How does
Yeah,
that
well,
work?
there's
each-
that little amplifier in there which has got separate outputs. So we'll
which
look at
you'll
that.
show us- yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
we'll look at that in a minute.
Thank you.
But that is the overall feed for all the guest
All 3,
microphones.
okay.
Yeah. So that's the principles of the actual desk. There is, next to the CD player in that rack, this thing here. Basically, I'm going to tell you what it's about, but never touch it, okay? So what it's all about doing is, if you open lots of microphones in the room, so you've got 2 or 3 guests, then, we've had problems because people haven't been using the right microphones or had the right microphones up, but assuming you've got the right microphones up for who's speaking, then what happens is your voice gets picked up by the other mics as well, so it can sound quite ambient. It doesn't have that nice proximity sound that you need. So what I would recommend is, even when you're talking to people, when you're not having a conversation, don't have all the mics open. Only open the mics that you need to have up. But what we've got in here is what's called gates. So we've set it up so if the volume coming into any mic is below a certain level, it mutes it automatically. So just to try and keep some of the echo out. And also we've set this up so if anyone is a bit too loud, it'll try and pull it in a little bit as well. So it tries to get rid of the noise at the bottom and pull the top in a bit. But I'm just telling you that's what it's there for. You shouldn't need to touch it. And what I'm actually going to try and do, for about 17 quid, we can get a Perspex sheet, like a proper sheet that you fix over the top. And I suggest we do that because that's what needs to happen, I think. Okay, use of studio mics. So this is the Audio Technica mic. We've got 4 of them. They're all the same now in the studio. And you talk into the front of it. So the side that says Audio Technica, not that you can necessarily see that because it's got a windshield on it. You talk into the front of the microphone. And you need to be within 6 inches of it. So it's no use being out here. So you and your guests need to be, within 6 inches of the front of the mic. And if you're a bit closer, it doesn't matter. You can turn the gain down to get the level right. But if your guest is right out here, it's going to sound crap on air. So get them close. And those ones on the little table stands are designed so basically, if they're just sitting forward towards the table, they're at the right height for them to. And you can obviously adjust the height of those as well. Yeah. So 6 inches away. Leave the windshields on. The front view is the bit there. There's a bit at the back that I think says back. So if you don't try and talk into there, because the whole point of these is they've got what we call a cardioid response, so they don't pick up from the back. So it will sound like you're on the toilet or something. So yeah, but you don't speak into the top of these, which is different from the OB mics, which we're going to come to in a minute. Okay, so that's a studio mic. Okay, audio levels. One of my biggest observations about Felixstowe radio is the audio speech levels are all over the place on a lot of output. So a few things here, and then I'm going to dive into a bit more detail. So level of audio beds, make sure they're low enough. I would say that also applies to some of the commercials that are done. We need to make sure that the audio bed under the talking is low enough so you can actually have clarity of the speech. Some of the bed is a bit too high at the moment. Level of speech not loud enough. I mean, most of the issues we have, I've only heard one person that's really been overloading and distorting in the last few weeks. Everybody else is just far too quiet if there is an issue. I mean, a lot of people are good, but it's level of audio playback. Obviously, the tracks generally that's easier to sort out. We've talked about these bits already. Oh yeah, go back to your programs and check how things sound. So do a self-review. So just go back and listen to a bit of what you did, so you can actually say, well, did I get that right? And have listen in your headphones and have a buddy tell you. So if you're going to be on air, if you've got someone you know that might be listening, say WhatsApp me if it doesn't sound right, just so you get some feedback. I would suggest. Okay, this is a bit more detail about the level control. So you can see here we've got a whole load of green ones, then some orange and some red. So what you want to do is you want to be in speech and in music really going nicely up to the top of the greens. That's kind of healthy. If you occasionally touch an orange, that's okay. If you ever hit red, the world's going to fall apart. No, it's not, but it's nice. But it will sound crap. So aim for that 0 there. That's labelled 0.
Andy, can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Because I haven't actually broadcast yet, so but I was with Laura the other day, and I noticed her guest was clipping in the red. So how do you stop when they're moving backwards and forwards on the mic? Well,
so what you need to do is just turn their gain down on their channel. So if that's guest 1, just turn that red knob down.
So don't be worried about them being too low.
I think it's impossible to overload those mics. So it's better to have someone closer and turn it down than to have them a long way away. So just watch it. But that's that whole thing about queuing. So when you have a guest, press cue before you take them on air. Get them to talk to you. Get a vibe, and so you never go in blind. Never open the fader blind without having checked the level.
So when you're checking the level, you see
the level. Yes, what it does is, I'm pretty sure it's this way around. It shows you on the left-hand side, so that suddenly gets assigned to your cue rather than the program. But I'll show you that in there in a minute. I say always use headphones, because several people I've been messaging where they're obviously not got the right microphone up, and you can tell you should be able to tell on the headphones if you haven't got the right microphone, because you won't hear them clearly on the headphones. So So use your headphones.
What
and
about guests? Should they use headphones?
They don't need to use headphones.
Because
I
we
would say.
always used to back in the olden days.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's nice to feel part of things, but when you've got the faders that when you turn it off, you hear the music anyway in the studio, so it's like not essential. But if people want
No,
to,
you get one or two that
Yeah.
say, "Can I?"
it feels more like you're part of things.
Yeah,
if you've got
sure.
headphones on. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I said radio, DJ, and play it gains should not usually need adjusting, but the microphone gains, and someone said, Dave said when he came in on Saturday, I think the mic gains would be turned right up to max. Now you should never need to do that. So if you're doing that, something's wrong because it will be sounding absolutely crap on air, no matter what's happening. If you've got them turned up max, so make sure the people are within that 6 inches, and that will be good. So I think that's probably one of the biggest. So this is before I get onto the OBs, some rules for presenting. So always use your headphones so you can hear what's happening. Always open your pres mic just before the song ends. Quite often we have like pregnant pauses where the track die fades away, goes completely silent. Then so it's always good to open your mic just before it's ended, so you can. There's a little bit of ambience and you can come in straight away.
Well, you've got the red countdown anyway that says 10, 9, 8.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
when I turn my mic back up.
Yeah. Always check the levels of the Q button. I've said that already. Never test mics live on air. So this has especially happened on OBs, but has happened otherwise. Testing. Yeah, we've had that on air a while. And never talk about being unsure if people can hear you. I've heard quite a few times people saying, "I'm not sure whether you can hear me or not." I mean, either they're going to hear you, or they're not. And if they haven't, if they can't, if you're not for whatever reason, you're not actually on air, it doesn't matter what you say. And if you are on air, then you need to be professional. So never ever say, "I'm not sure whether you can hear me." Never take your cues from on air on the phone or on a radio, because that's about 20 seconds behind what you're saying. So never rely on that, either in outside broadcast or in the studio, because there's a delay. Keep an eye on the levels all the time. So all the time when people are talking with you, when you've got guests or yourself, or when you're playing music, just keep an eye on those levels. Top of the greens, but when you leave, make sure the play it faders up, because otherwise, like the rest of the programming is not going to get through the system. And as I've put it again, if you have a buddy that's listening, then get them to give you some feedback so you know what's happening. Obviously, a lot of these don't apply to pre-records, but generally that's the principles. Does that all make sense? Mm-hmm. Any observations? No, cool. Okay, 2 things that we're going to do in the studio we haven't done yet. First of all, the desk is capable of doing an on-air light, which means when the speakers get cut, because you open a mic, a big light goes on. I think it would be fun to have that, but I mean they actually cost about 180 quid to buy a proper one. So, but if anyone fancies making one, then we can. Or anyway, there you go. We can wire that in once we get one. And also VoIP, I've talked about that. That's something we can add in. So we'll look to do that at some point, which will enable you to do, say, WhatsApp or phoning in and just.
I think that only works with Skype at the moment with those desks.
No, it should
From
work
what
with
DNR said.
Oh really?
Yeah.
No, I think you should be able to use any.
Unless that was an old article, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we've moved past that with the one we've got, that USB one. I think we should be able to do anything on that. Okay, so those are the 2 bits. This is just a bit more tech, so you understand how things are getting broadcast. So here is the studio. So this is the studio. Forget that's just the computer that's sending out. Don't worry about that. All of that's being sent to a cloud-hosted platform we've got called Azure. So that's what's actually providing listen again, sort of providing tune in. That's what's providing all of the online stuff. And also, the way the transmitter's working is it's just another listener to the cloud. So it's just another audience member that's streaming from the cloud. And if you ever want to, because you'll have these links, if you ever want to listen directly, you can use these URLs. But it's more for the techie guys, but I thought I'd just leave it in the front bit. There's a whole load of slides at the end of this presentation that are really tech, that if you fancy diving into, you're very welcome to. Okay, outside broadcasts. Here we go. So this is my passion. I know Laura's not here, but it's her passion as well. And so let's dive into it. So what we've tried to do is to make it as simple as we possibly can. So very simply, there are only 2 main things in an outside broadcast. there's this little DIDI mixer and there's a laptop, and then plus the microphones that you have with it and some way of getting connected to the internet. That's all we've got. So what we've got here is, so the laptop, you've got 3 ways of it actually connecting to the internet. Either, and I wouldn't recommend this, you can just run it on Wi-Fi. That's what we're doing at the moment. So you can join the local Wi-Fi. That relies on the Wi-Fi being pretty reasonable for it to work. We have the most unbelievably big Ethernet cable. I don't know who bought this.
I got that for the rugby club because
Yeah.
their connection was at the back of the club and was at the front, so I had to chuck it over the
Jamie,
roof to get through the back
Jamie
window.
obviously thinks that size really is important.
Yeah.
And so basically, there's an Ethernet socket. So if the place you're doing an outside broadcast from has got like a plug-in Ethernet, that's the best way to do it. So make use of that. And we've got a long lead, but we've also got short leads that we can do that one there, so we can use it for shorter things. And then the third one is, if we don't have any access, this is basically what we call a 4G modem. So this is like half of a mobile phone. It's the mobile bit of a mobile phone, and we plug a network cable into this, into the LAN port, and power it up, and then that actually uses 4G to actually connect us in. And we've used that very successfully in lots of places to do it. So those are the 3 ways of connecting there. Then in terms of the laptop connecting to the mixer, it's just this one USB lead. And signals flow in this USB lead both ways. So what happens is when you run Radio DJ on here, then the music plays digitally through there into the mixer, and we can pull it up on this fader here. And then when the signal that you mix on here with your microphones as well goes back down there and goes through the application you use to stream it. So actually it's a 2-way street on that cable. It's going to the broadcast and it's playing whatever you play in. You can also bring your own device, so you can bring your own tablet or laptop or whatever and plug them in here. We've got a lead for that. So basically what you've got along here is you've got how we suggest it set up. I've just plugged one mic in to show you. Suggest you use the presenter mic on channel 1. That's always good. What we suggest you do is use the guest mic on channel 2. So you've got the presenter and guest. And then what we have here, which is all about giving the atmosphere of that outside broadcast, because when you're out, what you want to do is you want to convey some of the vibe of where you are, or else you might also well be in the studio. So this is a stereo microphone which we just use, and we bring it in on these 2 channels. Don't have it up when the songs are playing, but when you have the microphones up, bring these up as well, and it gives just a general bit of pickup of the ambience of the place. So you're giving the vibe of what's happening.
And that's as far up as you'd put the faders,
Well,
is it?
yeah, I mean, you if you've got headphones on, you can hear.
Okay.
Yeah, so hear how it is. There is a headphone socket there, and what I did give Laura the other day, and I don't know where it's ended up, is a splitter, because I mean, I have seen a couple of people trying to do OBs without headphones in the last few months,
difficult.
which it's impossible, I would suggest. So you need at least 1 pair of headphones in there for the main presenter, and actually if you're going to be doing interviews and stuff,
You need 2.
You really need 2. So I did provide a splitter cable. I'm not sure where it's gone, so you can just plug 2 pairs of headphones in there. And really, that is the entirety of the outside broadcast rig. Radio DJ runs in exactly the same way as it does in the studio, or you have it at home. And I can show you, we've got different ways. We've got 3 different software tools which we can choose to get from here back to the studio, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the main one, there's a favourite one I've got because it does compression as well. The great thing is that this is all pretty easy to set up. But what I would urge you to do is to get familiarity before you do it, and everything can be actually tested before you go live, including checking that your signal is actually reaching the studio and is ready to go. So you can listen back on your phone or any other device. You can listen back from the server to check what you're sending before you go live is there and coming back. So that's the kind of those are the key bits. So I've got a whole load of bits more to talk about here. I think we've covered most of these. Yeah, so this is just documentation of what I've just told you. So you can have that on the readme. Okay, I've just, these are, I'm not going to get you to read through these, I'm just having these as a reminder. So which of these have I not covered? I think this is all the stuff. Oh yes, there's a pair of sockets on the back, which if you're running, there's two ways we tend to run these outside broadcasts. One is we're having a volume there, so we're creating a noise as part of it, and the other thing is the more silent one where, you know, we're just doing it to air, but we're not doing it, we don't have loudspeakers. So we've got a pair of speakers, and I think we're in the process of getting different ones possibly, but basically they plug in the back. And these two faders here, unlike what you might think, they only affect the speakers. They don't affect the volume of what's going on the transmission. So you can use those just to control the levels of the speakers and how they're running. When you get the laptop initially connected up, one simple way to check that you're connected is to pull up a browser and just, can I see the bbc.co.uk or whatever, you know, can I see a website? It's a very, very basic. What I suggest you do is you always have one of the tech team buddying you just to, remotely. They don't have to be physically with you, but buddying you just to make sure it runs. And I think Laura would probably say, and if you're watching this, Laura, forgive me, she's not a very techie person, but she's managed to do it quite successfully with a bit of, you know, support behind her. In fact, the main challenge, I think, is the physical logistics of lugging things around. That's one of the biggest issues for here. So what I've done is I've done two slides here of rules before the day and on the day of the OB. So one, is the power available? These are things to check before you go. Is the power available? Is there a table available to put the stuff on? Is it a dry or sheltered location, or are you taking the Felixstowe radio gazebo? Is there wide internet available? If not, is there a good enough signal with our modem? That's on the 3 network, but you can always borrow that and go down previously and just see whether it works. And you need to get, basically, as long as you get like probably 3 of the green lights on, that's going to be good enough. Will it be quiet enough to be able to broadcast? So you want some nice ambience, but you don't want to be in an environment that's just so flipping noisy that you're not going to be heard. So do you need a sound system as well? So are you providing music and stuff for the event and PA, or are you just running the thing? Is there sufficient time to set up and check ahead of the broadcast on the day? Yeah, because always there'll be a little niggling. There's always going to be a teething problem of some kind, so you need to have enough time to do that. If you can set it up the night before, if you're somewhere indoors, then that's even better. You need to decide whether you want to use the radio mics or the cabled microphones. So I know we've got some roving guys that like to go AWOL with the radio mics. That does give you an extra level of complexity of more things to go wrong. It gives you freedom, but it also gives complexity. So my personal recommendation is, if you don't need to go wild, I would just plug in 2 mics with these cables and run it locally. But we have a pair of radio mics, and they basically go in the same sockets, 1 and 2, and you run it in the same way. But we need to be careful that you're not going out of range, etc., of the radio mic and stuff. So I would say there, 2 pairs of headphones. You cannot run an OB without headphones. You need to be fully set up an hour before the broadcast, I would suggest. So you want to be there with everything running.
That was 5 minutes at the carnival, Andy. 5 minutes.
It was 5 minutes before the carnival. And ensure someone is able to give you some support. Okay, on the day, I keep saying there, you can listen back to the thing off air. So you yourself can check it's getting to the studio by using that. And that URL is the one we're currently using for most of the OBs. Ahead of going live, the way Play It works, which is not great, if it doesn't hear stuff when it's ready to cut over, it aborts the outside and it will just go to the next song on the playlist. So, and it does the same if it loses audio for a long time once it's underway. So you need to keep it going. So what that means is, like at least a couple of minutes before the hour, and make sure you've got accurate timing, you need to be playing music. I mean, you might as well play it for 10 minutes before the hour or something, just so it's there. And then if you want to give yourself confidence, what you could then do is you could browse to Felixstowe Radio and you could wait to start talking until you hear that what you're playing is actually cut through. But you don't need to do that. I think as long as you leave it, you've got to assume that the thing's cutting through, and maybe have a buddy. Again, have a buddy if you're doing an OB that's actually saying, yeah, you're on, it's sounding good. But leave it, wait till after the hour before you actually start talking and stuff.
Can you override that play it thing?
You mean to stop it coming?
To stop it cutting down.
I don't know Play It enough, but Dave and Jamie are the Play It experts, and what we've tended to do recently is schedule, tell it to keep trying.
Yeah.
So play one song, then try again. Play one song, then try again.
Down to a song. And
Yeah. So you can keep telling it.
And what we used to do is we'd make it a full hour for the outside broadcast. So we cut that down to 15 minutes. So it will play the next link after 15 minutes. So if it drops out, you've only got to wait 15 minutes rather than the hour again. Yeah.
So I think that's all of that is worth doing. Okay, test from the day before, even from your own house. So if you're going to do an OB, take this stuff to your house, set it up, and you can listen back off the server and actually check it's working. Just have a play and ring someone, phone a friend if you need help. But I still think that for community radio, this kind of stuff is great. So the more we can do with it, the better, is my personal take on it. So this is the mixer. I think I've just labelled this up mainly so you've got a takeaway. You can look at this, but the mics go presenter mic, guest mic, the stereo mics there, and then this is where the speakers go at the back for the active speakers. Headphone splitter goes in there, USB to the laptop, and that button, it's really important, needs to be in, the one that says USB down, because that's the one that tells the desk to use the sound from the laptop coming in on that channel. So that's the one button. That's why I labelled it like I did the labels for the other desks, so you see that, and that's the label in there. So this was just a very simple setup that someone did somewhere. This is before we had the ambient mics plugged in, but just the two mics, a headphone. Someone just got a pair of headphones in there, and that cable that goes to the laptop, and that's it. So it really is simple, but the main thing is to get familiar with it. And once you've got the laptop connected to the internet via either that box or the Wi-Fi or the cable, then the remote help can come in and look at what's happening on the laptop. Yeah, your tech support can do that. Okay, OB show. So first of all, these microphones, you talk into the top, okay? And you use them as close as you can, because generally you want to kind of keep it as tightly as possible. So I think I'm repeating myself here. Never take your timing cue from air. Never test mics live on air. Never talk about being unsure if people can hear you. Always check the levels as you go. Always have the music or audio running ahead of cutover time. Always use headphones. Always use the mics closely. And always connect the mixer in the same way. Yeah, so for one of the ones before Christmas, or when it was in a couple of months ago, people had started plugging different mics in different channels. Always go presenter on 1, guest on 2, ambient 3 and 4. That's how we set it up. So just follow the same process, or else we create merry craziness. So checking feeds. What we've got is a whole way of you actually checking lots of different feeds. Now some of us, like Jamie and Dave and I, use some of these to actually listen back to see what's happening. But the bottom one here is that OB checker. So if you have a different OB mount point or name, but that's typically the one that you'll use. So that's what you put in. One thing we could do, Jamie, is I was thinking we could do some nicer URLs. Yeah. You could configure them on cPanel or whatever you've got for the website. So we actually have, you go felixstoweradio.co.uk/ whatever it is, OB or something, and it will give you that. So I'll talk to you about that.
So like, Dave, your Sunday one is actually after the 8,000 is / Dave Melton.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to know their personal one, we can tell you what that is. Then you can always check yourself. Yeah. And self-checking I can't encourage enough. Do whatever you can to check things are working yourselves. Okay. That was all I was intending to do here. I'm just going to show you what the other slides are like. I'm not going to go through them, but so this is the technical setup at a transmitter site. I've just had to. Last night I spent 4.5 hours reconfiguring a new computer to do all of these things because it had the other one had died. This is what it looks like at Felixstowe, at the school. So that's the transmitter at the bottom. That's an audio processor to keep it sounding quite loud enough on site. And then that's the converter, like we've got some in the cupboard, and that's a little computer. So this is in one of the racks in the one of the data rooms at the high school. And what we've got is, because we've got our own BT broadband line that comes in on the ground floor. This is on the second floor. So we're using school optical fibres to get from the ground floor where the modem, where the router is, up into this room. And we've also connected the computer to the school's network as well. So if our network fails, it should use the school network as an alternative network to get back to us. So that's just so you can see what's happening there. You don't need, worry about this. This is just in case you've all wondered what the IceCast server is about. So when, Dave, you do your show from home, or when we do an OB, what we're doing is we're sending a source into the IceCast server here, or as we did the other day in a calamity, my IceCast server at home, because this one wasn't working. And then basically what we do, play it, then sucks it from that server. And when you are checking the stream, you're sucking it from that server as well. So it's going into here, and then you're sucking it back out again to check it. That's kind of what's happening with IceCast servers. Yeah, we use tools to get in remotely. I've just documented these because if somebody else needs to do this.
Stop me asking.
How to configure the transmitter for the studio and for the thing. This is what they look like. So this is the one this end that's sending all the feeds out. So this is all the techie stuff that's happening on one of the computers here in the rack. That's sending all the feeds out. We've also got an off-air FM receiver in the rack, which allows us to use one of those links I showed you earlier to listen back and hear how it's doing. And this is what's happening at the school. So this is the computer at the school. And one of the most complicated things about setting a computer up like this at the school is it has to keep working all the time. And if there's a power cut, it needs to come back working. If it loses network, it has to come back working. And actually computers are quite difficult to set up, so they just come back and do. So that's why it takes 4.5 hours to configure it, to get it working like that. One of the changes we're thinking of doing, which won't really impact you in the way you work, is at the moment everything comes through the studio, and so all transmission goes through the studio apart from when we use a bypass, which we'll show in a minute in there. But what we're thinking of doing, the plan is, because it gets Jamie off having to do this and again manually, and also makes other things like, is actually making the cloud the master. So basically, the studio here will eventually become like another remote source. So Dave can do his show from home, or someone can do his show from here, and it will go into the cloud irrespectively. So the cloud will become the master ship, if you like. That's where we want to get to. So things will be scheduled in there rather than play it, is effectively what will happen. So we won't really need that. But that's
First meeting with Phil Ashby on Tuesday to discuss this.
Anyway, that's I've been talking for a long time, I know, but hopefully
43 minutes.
there you go. Hopefully I it. So I suggest we go through. I'll bypass Studio One so we can play with it.